Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Hustle and Heart. I'm your host, Edie Weintraub. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Helio Bernal, a visionary chef and restaurateur known for bringing the rich flavors of authentic Mexican cuisine to life. From his pop-up beginnings with the real Mexican vittles to celebrated spots like De Boca a Boca and Boca Taqueria, Helio's work is a testament to his passion for culture, community, and creating spaces where food tells a story. Helio, thank you for being here with us.
Hola, and good afternoon. And Eddie, thank you for having me on the podcast on the Hustle and Heart. So thank you so much, and hello to everybody.
So for those of our listeners who are not based in Atlanta or have not had a chance to experience some of your amazing work, tell us a little bit more about yourself and why Atlanta's home and why these operations to move forward with growing your brand.
So, great question. Atlanta has become certainly close to heart. I'm a Chicago native. We moved down from Atlanta in 1999. My father came down in 96 during the Olympics on Hank Aaron, which we'll kind of get to why we're in Summerhill with one of the concepts. And, Atlanta, I think is, like I tell everybody, has opened doors and has given me more than I expected. Plus, it's also very warm weather. Maybe not today, as you and I can tell being in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
So we're very proud, and Atlanta is a very diverse city that's only growing, and I think it's a perfect time to be able to catch that wave, right? And we've been very blessed to partner with several folks, like in the Summerhill area, to be now Peachtree Corners area that we are, and the real pop-up, the Mexican Vittles, the pop-up that started everything.
So what was the catalyst to go from the pop-up to a brick-and-mortar space? How did that all come about? And because there's a lot of amazing operators who like to dibble-dabble on the side, and they love farmers markets, and they love popping up here and there, but they're not quite ready to make the plunge. So tell us a little bit more about how that came to be.
A little bit about myself, a very heavy food and beverage background. When my folks ran an operation, they used to own a distribution company. Working with them, my father made sure that to be able to sit at his seat, I had to kind of go through all the ranks. So I started with sweeping warehouses, delivering, being sales folks, and then ultimately becoming their CSO. And throughout this multi-million-dollar company, I worked myself up. I learned a ton from food and beverage, from importing, exporting, sourcing very local. And we were obviously very geared in the Mexican community, but then we opened it to the Latin community. Ultimately, we ended up opening it across all borders, just because we had clients such as like your Food Lions, your Food Depots. So, we were getting into the big chain supermarkets. And that's when I came in and I wanted to develop what was the food service channel into a lot of, chain C-store groceries. And we didn't have like a presence in the food service, but there was something about food service that drew my attention, not only from owning a restaurant or being in a restaurant, tasting everything, right? From like a whole product to what a chef can do with it, or what a passionate person in the food industry can do with it. So when I opened up the food service channel, I grew it, I think it was like 600 the first year. And every year we just kept growing. And the opportunity was given to us. The trust was there from being at the grocery stores to moving into the food service. And what made me go into do the pop-up, the real Mexican Vittles, was I noticed that no matter how much I strived or no matter what I did, I was always Helio's son. My father's name is Helio, so I was always Helio's son. And I was always like, oh yeah, they do food service. Yeah, that's Mr. Bernal's company, which is fine. But being raised in an entrepreneurial home, and my entire family is actually entrepreneurs all across in Chicago, Indianapolis, Ohio, and Mexico. I noticed that was something that I was like, I need to be recognized for something that some of my efforts go into. So I served on the board of a nonprofit who was ran by one of my main mentor, which is David Lee with the Saigon Cafe based out of here in Atlanta. It was called the Atlanta International Night Market. That was in 2016.
He's amazing.
He's a great guy. This was around 2016, and the night market was coming in 2017. To be honest, we were sitting on a board meeting, and we had practically all the cuisines except, believe it or not, Mexican. We just could not find somebody that wanted to do Mexican. Knowing that I had close friends that operate phenomenal spots here in the Atlanta area, and we reached out. I said, hey, would you like to do this? And everybody was just like, no, we don't have the bandwidth, or it's going to take time, or we're not into that. So while we were sitting in that meeting, everybody looked around and everybody assumed, including myself, that being Mexican, I could take on it. So all I had to do was say, Well, I've got mom, I've got aunt. My aunt was visiting at that time, and my grandma from my mother's side was still here, passed away. But anyhow, she was still here with us. I said, you know what? I'll take on it. So that's where the real Mexican Vittles was born. It was April of 2017. It was a 3-day festival. I think over 80,000 people came by, and I stuck to the very basics, right? It was tamales, street corn, and tacos. I think I only did chicken and steak tacos at that time. And what I noticed was that during those 3 days, it was a very lucrative business. I mean, not only, not just talking like money and lines, but the satisfaction of the folks, right? What we were doing. You always got taught something. If you're going to do it right. Otherwise, don't get in it. Don't waste people's time. So, and also because I like to eat. I love to eat. And I love to my stomach not to hurt. So I was like, I've got to give good ingredients. I got to, really put some passion. And after that 3-day weekend, I remember telling David, he was like, so what did you think? And I was like, man, I'm ready to open a restaurant. And he looked at me like, you've only been doing this 72 hours. Slow down. He's like, do this for like 24 months, a little over 2 years. And then when you really know what it takes to be in the food service industry and the hospitality more than anything, then go ahead. So, fast forward about 5 years after, but I signed the lease to Boca in 2019. But during those 2 years, I learned, right? It was like, you have to wake up early, you go to sleep late, and you're on your feet all day. You're going to cut yourself, you're going to burn yourself. And everything I've learned was obviously through trial and error, just being out there. And I remember I started just putting our name out there. And we picked up one brewery, which was Gate City in Roswell. And at that moment, the brewery scene was very prominent, and it was growing in the Atlanta market. So they picked us up. We started doing food with Gate City. From Gate City, I went to Second Self. And I like to name these folks because they gave me the opportunity. And, without them, I don't think I'd be where I'm at. So I always like to say thank you to them. And alongside them, within 6 months, I grew to 6 food carts. It was like a food cart a month, basically, probably a little bit quicker. But within 6 months, we had 6 food carts, over 17 breweries on our account. And we were out all day, every day, to where we became Sweetwater's #1 food vendor. We all think, Sweetwater, big one. I remember dreaming, like, man, I want to sell that Sweetwater. I want to sell. And then out of nowhere, I started selling that Sweetwater. And then out of nowhere, I started getting like the first spots. And then it just became, it's only you guys and it's all your events. And I was like, okay, we're getting traction here. And alongside them, some of the partners that I love to name as well, that have always been having us under the wing and protected us, was Scoff Brewing, is some great folks over there. And also Monday night during the pandemic, opened the doors. And as we got back into like, I guess, moving and opening during the pandemic, Monday night gave us one location, then they gave us a second location. And then we were even talking about expanding with them at some point. However, during this time, I noticed that obviously our menu expanded. At this time, Grandma has already taught me how to do some recipes. Grandma taught me how to do tortillas by hand. Tell folks I didn't even know how to flip a tortilla. It's just the same, but it's to put like how much I knew about cooking, right? But there's one thing that I know is, like, if you put your love and passion to it, everything normally comes out great. So we started doing a lot of breweries, and on my way down to Eventide, who was in Grant Park, neighboring city to Summerhill, I was driving and I saw like the sign that said, restaurant space for lease. And at that moment, I was like, I kind of want just something small, something maybe like 600 square feet where we could just sling tacos, serve local brewery beer, and still have the food carts going. But I think we have to be careful with what we dream about and what we say, because the little we get and the more I say, man, I wish I could have this, or I wish I could have that, you start acquiring it. And then it's like, okay, here we go, we're growing. And at that moment, I was trying to take over this small spot here in Summerhill, and they kept trying to get me to take over a bigger spot. I was like, I want to take it slow. Long story short, we ended up being right here at the building we're in at 39 Georgia Avenue. It's a beautiful building, all brick. I don't know if you can kind of see behind me. And when they presented this building to me, it was just like a dream come true, right? For myself, walking into a restaurant that's an all brick building was just like, it was literally a dream to me. growing up, I always wanted to have a restaurant. I never knew what it took to have one. So
can we
I ended
expand
up
on
moving.
that for a second, though? Because I think it's important, right? The majority of our listeners are those that are curious, but also real estate developers. And so I think it's important to share what was so compelling about the exposed brick for you. What did it mean? How did it feel? Why were you attracted to it versus any other brick and mortar space that you maybe had contemplated or seen others in?
I think just exposed brick gives it a lot of character itself. You do not really have to do anything to the building, minus a few touches. We had to build everything out from the ground, from, the kitchen. We put walls up ultimately, but the shell just being exposed brick just gave a character that was like, okay, this could be like one of those like open warehouses, right? Where folks come in and what I like to call a bodega. So it was like, it looked like a bodega to me. Personally, it took me back to when I was in the distribution centers and I was, all bricks and it was all food. And my vision has always been sell my salsa, sell my tortillas, to the stores. Go back to what brought me to where I'm at, right? Which is supply, hopefully in the future, everybody with our own tortillas, salsas, and ingredients. So an exposed brick was just like a lot of character. Didn't do much, and also at the time I was starting and the budget was very tight. There was no money to do a lot of stuff. So when I saw this exposed brick, I was like, man, this is beautiful. This is perfect.
A good foundation, a good place to start. So in most instances, right, you're getting an allowance from the developer. You're getting maybe sometimes some infrastructure like a grease trap or something like that. But then you're coming in and building it from there. So how has the experience building a new restaurant affected how you look at your expansion and your growth?
I'll tell you what, that is a really good question. With Boca and Summerhill, we started, we did get an allowance. And one thing I've learned throughout building this place out was never handshake. And there's really no friends in business, right? And then I say that because we handshook and I didn't have like a timeline of when are you going to have this completed by? When are you going to have, it got to the point where we were delaying the build out above us that I ended up losing all my TI money, which was, I was really depending on all that TI money. And we ended up losing all that TI money because it was just, we had to pay for liquidated damages, I think it's called, for holding folks back and whatnot. And at one point I remember going to a meeting with the guys upstairs and saying, they were like, Helio, you've got about 10 days to either cover this up, and we were running our HVAC system and our hood through the second floor into the roof, but they were just very slow because we couldn't pass inspections. And this is where it goes, where you learn, right? Where you need to have documentation
or someone to help you out.
Or literally, someone that really helps you out, right? Sometimes I think we try to save a little bit of money and go a different route, but ultimately it's like that money you try to save might seem like a lot at that moment, but in the long run, it's actually going to be a lot cheaper because you're not delayed, because you do get your TI, because you're actually open way before you thought. I think there's like 4 different articles that came out in Atlanta from they're opening on this day and they're actually now opening this day. Now they're really opening this, and it got to a point where I was out of money.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. And I was just like, okay, not only financially, but mentally. And you get to a point where you're just like, am I doing this right? Like, should I have stepped in here? Should I really have done this? Should I pursue this? I was very happy with the food carts. But again, you wanted a whole restaurant. You wanted a whole, people to drink some phenomenal crafted cocktails, and took on this. And well, I'll tell you what, the perseverance and resilience has really taught me that it's there. You just have to keep going. You have to get up. You've got to work for it. I tell folks, our younger generation, it's like, hey, everything's out in the streets. It's just whether you want to go get it. And I think the primary thing that's kept me with the doors open has always been honesty. I've always been very honest, very, very, like an open book. And I think a lot of folks respect that. I think that's giving people respect when you're honest and you're straightforward about everything in life. And they know that they can trust you, and in the future they can potentially work with you.
I'm curious, what was so attractive? I mean, obviously you're driving down, you're heading to Eventide on the route beyond the brick, right? Just kind of looking at the street and what the vision was. What was so attractive about looking at an emerging neighborhood? Because unfortunately, right, the Braves moved north and they left the area. And so you didn't have that energy of the stadium anymore, but the stadium ended up getting converted for Georgia State, and there's been more residential built around it. Talk to us about did you like kind of that downtown human scale feel, just driving on the street that really caught your attention?
Well, I think what did catch my attention was when you see the building on the outside, it's very like edgy, right? It's got cool colors. It draws attention, and it was like a new market. And in reality, Georgia Avenue was built on entrepreneurship, immigrant entrepreneurship, and that was just like the number one. Man, I really like this, and I always think of myself as an immigrant entrepreneur. And the other thing was that my father, when he first came down from Chicago to distribute, he came down 75, and he was like, yeah, I was literally on Hank Aaron during the Olympics. And I think that was another this is where my father came in. I was like, to me, it made sense. This is where you should start as well. I'll tell you what, it hasn't been easy, for sure. It definitely has not been easy, but I don't think I would ever change the trajectory that I've been through. Georgia State and being here on the weekends whenever they have their games, you're for sure gonna get a ton of business. Right now, we're obviously at the beginning of a new year still, and it's like not only that, but the cold weather just slows everybody down. Nobody wants to come out.
It's January, right? So usually this winter time, people are recouping from spending their money over the holidays, and January, even sometimes February, is a little slow for folks across food and beverage. So I think over time we've understood that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think those were like the two of the key points. And last but not least, my ex-wife and I, 10 minutes from here, we bought a house, we built a house. So it was like the three check marks of, it was an 8-minute drive from the house, and it was going to be the full restaurant. And it's where Dad drove by during the Olympics in '96, migrating from Chicago to Atlanta. And the other thing is Georgia Avenue is built on immigrant entrepreneurship. And there's a lot of immigrant entrepreneurs, very well-renowned restaurants down the road from us that I'm very, very pleased and very happy to, share this road with them for sure.
No, it's come together very nicely, and inevitably, like a lot of things do, sold to a new owner during the time that you've been there so far. So, that always is very interesting to kind of watch. I like to tell our folks, make sure you get the best deal today because you don't know who the owner is going to be tomorrow. And while you might have, like you said, a good relationship, speaking with all of that with the original group, the new group, you might not have that relationship with, and they might not even be based locally to foster that relationship. So I think that's really important to try to negotiate your best deal the first time you're in there.
I'd like to capitalize on that, and it's something that I tell a lot of folks and it's something that I learned working in the distribution, that you make the money or you make the profits when you buy, not when you sell. So for example, you'll make a good deal at the beginning, right? Not forward. Why? Because you don't know how the business is really going to go, right? I think that's the one character of the entrepreneur is we don't know if we're going to sell a taco or 1,000 tacos today, because you don't know if folks are coming, right? Especially when you're opening up something new in a new emerging market. And it's something very challenging, but I tend to work very well under pressure. And hey, so far we're doing okay.
You make it look good. So tell us a little bit about Boca Taqueria.
Boca Taqueria. So, being here in Summerhill, and after being open for 2.5 years, almost 3, and noticing you're really in an emerging market, Boca Taqueria with Politan Road was one of those. Before they opened up Colony Square, they reached out to us when we were at Monday night when they were going to open Colony Square. And I just wasn't sure. One, the Boca was still opening up. 2, Politan Road was a new concept to the Atlanta market, and I wasn't sure how that was going to play out. So I remember doing food demos for them, but we took a step back. Even though during the pandemic, they're in probably one of the busiest places in town. I mean, Midtown Colony Square, right? I think if I'm don't mistake, they told me the foot traffic is, I don't know, don't quote me on this one, might be 60,000 a week, I think, something insane, right? And I was like, well, yeah, but during the pandemic, I was like, I don't know how many of these buildings are really going to continue to have folks coming to the office. So long story short, we took a step back from that. Fast forward to 2024, CEO, great guy. We got connected through Parul, who's followed us since the pop-ups. And I'll tell you what, I have folks that come into the restaurant, and even though the restaurant, we've kind of upped the food that we used to do at the pop-ups. You know, when somebody, I'm like, people really know the Boca or the Helio because of the pop-ups, right? Which was like great food, fast quality food is what I like to call it, right? And Will and I, we sat down. He came down to Boca and he was like, hey, I'm opening up another Politan Row. And I think at that moment when I found out it was going to be in Peachtree Corners, I was like, okay, I think this is my turn. Like what I said about my father, that this is where he came. We'll start here. And I was like, wait, Peachtree Corners is where, like, I remember I bought my first home, right? And I was like, this is where I bought my first home. And I was like, I guess I owe it to the Peachtree Corners. And the Forum used to be one of those places that when I lived there, I would go all the time, would visit there with family and friends. And it was just, it just made sense. Also because I noticed that, the Mexican market wasn't very prominent in that area until this day. And I just felt that we had a really great opportunity. So here comes Boca Taqueria, our first QSR, but it's amazing that we're partnered with Politan Row. They control all the beverage program, and we just focus on what ultimately I believe people who are passionate in cooking or chefs are really great at, right? Which let us focus on food and do whatnot. And a lot of folks might look at it like, well, you've already had a restaurant. And it's like, you're right, we do have a restaurant. But I'm always about take it back to the beginning, right? You've been at the restaurant, you notice that it's 2.5, 3 years, it's been challenging, you're still open by the grace of God, I'll give it to God. So it's like, how do you want to like breathe a little bit and have more time with the family? And it's like, take it back to square one, which is just handle food for now and then go back into the field. Also touching on family, I have 2 daughters and they both live in Gwinnett. So I'm a lot closer to them. I'm able to, hang out with them. They're able to come more often than, I think Buford from Summer Hill's at least an hour. So now, they couldn't come during the week. Well, now we're maybe half that. Some folks might think 30 minutes is like, man, that's still far. But in Atlanta, 30 minutes is like, oh, it's right here. At least I believe so. So, Peachtree Corners and having another QSR, which is, quick service restaurant, and giving more of those folks upstairs that I believe are a little bit more diverse, Gwinnett County and DeKalb, neighboring county from us, that opportunity of tasting our food again, not just from popping up. We popped around all over Lawrenceville, Duluth, and Suwanee, Norcross, but now we're like stationed there. And it's like, you know what? Let's give these folks a little bit of the love that we like to share with Atlanta. Now we're going to share it with OTP, right? And it's been phenomenal. I had a meeting earlier with one of our vendors, and when you look at it, everybody has LED signs, right? But we did like this graffiti handmade sign. And she was like, well, you're very different. And I was like, and that's kind of like what I love to hear, right? That we're very unique, we're very different in everything we do, right? From the attention to the food, to the presentation, to I guess just how we operate. I'm not saying, I don't know if we're the best. If you ask me, I say we're the best. However, I do know we're different. That for sure I can guarantee.
Appreciate about food halls is when the story and the essence and the feel comes out in the space, because we all are emotional beings, right? We're human beings. So it's, touch, smell, sight, taste. And so, yes, the food, is phenomenal, but so much of the desire to go towards a particular stall in a food hall, I think is compelling by the aesthetics of the space. So I can't wait to see how it comes together.
Yeah, no, it's been a great journey. Right now we're just shy of opening up. So, I get that off of, oh, all right, here we go. But then I kind of sit down and say, hey, you've done this before.
Yes, well, and not nearly as exhausting, I think, as a full-service restaurant. But also, I love the fact that, it's close to home, get to see family. I think, it's really important that no matter what location you move into, you stay, especially for 1 or 2, close to home, because you just never know when you, as the owner, need to be there to assess something, to meet with someone. So I'm glad to see, the pieces come together.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like you said, the other day, it's there. And I like to be a lot of hands-on. Again, I think that really engraved in my head when my father told me, right, if you ever want to lead, you better know the entire process. So the other day I was sitting there, we were getting ready for our health inspection, and, I've never painted, I swear to God, never painted in my life. Well, I painted my first wall at that food hall, and I did epoxy on it so we could pass inspection. And I look at it like, well, now I've learned another trade, right? And everything I've learned is kind of like trial and error. Like we were trying to design on this wall and it was through paint, and the inspector was, okay, well, you got to put epoxy, but it wasn't done. So I was like, well, if I put epoxy, we're not going to be able to fix it later. And I ended up putting epoxy, which is taking me back to what you were saying, being close to home. I think I left at 3 a.m. and I took a jog home, quick little 15-minute jog. And that's what I was like, if something happens, your car breaks down, you don't have a car, it's just a quick 15-minute jog. Rather than Summerhill, I'm like, you're going to have to get to the MARTA if you don't have a car, and then from the MARTA all the way down there, or get on your car and at least a 30-minute drive. And, I do appreciate it. I do appreciate the commute, for sure.
That's great to hear. So I'm curious, what advice, if there's folks that are looking to follow in your footsteps, because I'm sure you bumped elbows with a couple of other operators in breweries, because just real quick aside, in the state of Georgia, breweries typically brew beer, or they distill, or they make wine, but they don't typically have a full service kitchen or restaurant inside the space. So I love kind of the pop-up experience where you get to have different chefs kind of come through. So how would you advise other culinary entrepreneurs like yourself?
Well, first, honestly, just culinary or not, I just advise people that first you got to believe in it yourself. And even if the entire world doesn't believe it, including the family, and you feel like they're going to think you're crazy, you just believe in it. You just got to keep going. And the perseverance and consistency, I think, really forges your path. And also from believing in yourself, is just really educating yourself on where you're going, what you need to get that place, whether it's a pop-up or a whole restaurant or a QSR. Every county or every state, I'm pretty sure, has different, regulations and codes when you talk about the culinary scene. But it's just, if you educate yourself and if you sit down and kind of read on, okay, this is what I need to have, whether it's the plumbing or how many sinks or how big of a hood, or if you go into the brewery, right, that you need to have like a signed waiver from the owners that you can wash your hands in the restroom to kind of bypass that 3-compartment sink or that hand wash station that everybody needs. There's ways to do it, but you just educate yourself. Some of us tend to jump into the deep end and figure it out. And I'll tell you what, it's not the easiest. Myself, I think it's a fun way, and I've been very blessed by the grace of God that I've been able to navigate this not easy, very well, but just educate yourself, believe in yourself, and don't stop. Just keep going. It'll pay off, right? I think there's something that I love. They say, and it's like what's hard right now will pay off later, right? Rather than taking it easy now and making it hard later. So it'll be hard for a little bit. I mean, you've got to put the work in it, but then sooner or later, you're in a blink of an eye, you're going to be like, holy moly, I've really built this. I've really done this. I mean, I look at myself, and from 2017 to now we're at 25, I'll be 8 years in April in the food industry or in the hospitality. And, to blink of an eye and say, we did Summerhill. We're known for the pop-ups. We do the PGA Tour. We do Mitsubishi Electric. We've talked to like some of the arenas around town to potentially put a place in there as well. And it's just like anything is possible. But again, I think our work was respected by determination and saying, if you say you're going to be there, do it, right? So whatever you promise, make sure it happens, for sure.
I might have to have that scroll across our graphic as a quote, but I find that, as you mentioned, right, the best investment you can make is in yourself. So here you taught yourself to paint, but also think of the level of satisfaction in going through that process, because now you look at that wall when you're there, you go, I did this, right? And so I think it's really beautiful. I feel like we're a little bit starved for that, that tangible satisfaction, right? Everything is electronic, and I feel like there's a group of people that want to see what they've done or step back and reflect. And so I'm glad that you took the time to do that. Like you said, 3 a.m., jog home, but every day you'll feel that much more proud of the work that you did.
Yeah, hustle and heart. I love it.
Really?
So yeah, I think you're right. The best investment is in yourself, and like everything they say, if you can't invest or love yourself, how are you going to be able to help others? So I wish that
how can folks get in touch with you for any kind of follow-up or to check out what you're up to and be apprised as to when our opening is for Boca Taqueria?
For sure. So our social media, you can follow us on Boca ATL on Instagram and Facebook. That'll be our strongest social media. We do kind of have social media for every location, but Boca ATL kind of Just that's the strongest following we have. We put that throughout everybody, right? And also, we've got our emails. I'm not sure if I say it or like if you share it.
You can put it in the show notes. No worries.
Okay. We've got our email. And that actually, like, I'll put my personal email on there and take it on that. And come down to Atlanta. If you're not in Atlanta, I'd love for y'all to come down to Atlanta and give us a try. Summer Hill, we're only 15 minutes from the airport. When you arrive at Hartsfield, just know that we're probably a really close drive that you can stop in, taste some good food, and then go on and see the city. So social media, email, and I'll see you guys whenever you come to the restaurants.
Helio, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your vision, and your passion with us. Your story is a reminder that great food is more than just a meal. It's a connector, a creator of spaces where communities gather and thrive. At Hustle and Heart, we believe in the power of people like you who bring soul to every space they touch. And your commitment to authenticity and collaboration inspires all. If you loved this conversation and want to hear more stories like Helio's, don't forget to add us, like and subscribe. Your support helps us reach more people and share the emerging work that all of us are doing in this industry. Together, we can spotlight the hustle and hearts behind creating spaces that truly connect us.
Everybody, my name is Helio Bernal, and you're listening to Hustle and Heart. Thank you.